and welcome back to the Boropolis podcast. As usual, I am joined with Nathan, and as usual at the moment, we have another Middlesbrough defeat to talk about. Nathan, we've waited all international break. We've let the sort of disappointment of such a bad start of the season fade away into the backs of our heads for a week. Enjoyed ourselves, not let Middlesbrough ruin our weekend, at least last weekend. The real football's back, and lo and behold, we've got this mess to talk about. I mean, I would normally at the start of the podcast ask how you are, but I'm guessing after yesterday, you surely can't be doing that well.
Yeah, not in terms of a football fan standpoint. No, not really, Chris. Obviously, 2 weeks off for the international break. Sort of enjoyed watching England against Scotland in the week. Obviously, getting one over that lot was very nice. But then seeing Boro come back, I sort of wasn't even too bothered, but at the same time, sort of happy that club football was back just to watch the Premier League more than anything. Uh, and yeah, I sat down yesterday to watch the boys in red and white, and yeah, disappointed but not surprised.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to sum it up, to be honest. That could well be the title of the podcast this week. Disappointed but not surprised. It really is the case at the moment, isn't it? Yeah, listen, I think we spoke last week about how, like we have done towards the back end of almost every podcast this season, where we've, visualized what this podcast might be like when we stick a couple of wins together, the tide starts to turn and that positivity really manages to break through, and we start to record podcasts like we did last season, where sometimes we'd record a podcast and there'd be 3 wins in a week to talk about. And I mean, we could have said anything. We pretty much just smiled and laughed throughout. But unfortunately, we're in this situation now where there's not really anything to smile about at all, apart from sort of the age-old saying of, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. I think that's what stage of recording these podcasts we're already at, to be honest. But yes, as you say, obviously we had the international break. We knew that Blackburn was going to be our first test post the international break. And obviously, we've never historically had a great time at Ewood Park. But I think a lot of fans probably thought, look, we could be playing a few other teams in this division that at the moment would seem like a more difficult test than Blackburn. And that's by no means me saying that I went into this game thinking that we'd win the game. I didn't, if I'm honest. I thought that at best we might nick a point. And to be honest, I think it probably shows sort of where I'm at with this Middlesbrough team at the moment, where I would have been quite pleased with that. But yeah, Nathan, going into the game, truthfully, did you expect anything? I mean, obviously, as we always do, we sort of reflect on how we feel before the game in terms of once we'd seen that team lineup come out at 2:00. I mean, how were you feeling once you'd seen some of the changes that were made?
Well, even prior to seeing the team, I pretty much wasn't filled with much confidence. Borough Stats on Twitter had posted in the week that in our last 27 meetings with Blackburn, we've only won 4. So I thought, oh, well, hopefully here's hoping that there's going to be some reverse psychology going on there. And yeah, of course that wasn't to be. But yeah, of course, the team came out and there was some aspects of the team that I was quite happy with. Bangura straight into the team, the first chance that he could be selected for Michael Carrick, and he's put in. Whether that is completely down to him being a new player, or whether that's down to Lucas Engel being out of the squad with an injury, a knock in training, according to Michael Carrick. I'm not quite sure, but was quite pleased to see what Bangura could offer. Seeing Marcus Forss back in the side, I think he offers something that we've reiterated over the years of the podcast, which is that he's quite unorthodox, but he's effective at what he does. But one of the sort of strange ones for me was seeing three central midfielders on the team sheet and no change in formation for Middlesbrough, of course. Johnny Howson, Hayden Hackney, and Lewis O'Brien all started the game, and Lewis O'Brien was shifted out onto that left-hand side, which, look, it's something that, okay, if you want to experiment with it, then fair enough, but probably don't experiment with your team quite like that when you're winless prior to the first international break of the season, and you've just had a transfer window where you've brought in multiple wingers, and by doing that, you're pretty much saying to them, you're not good enough already. We can see that you've not performed in your opening 5 games, and you've been bombed out immediately. So, look, the team selection was quite strange for me. Of course, Matt Crooks is in the team again at number 10 as well. And of course, we've had the conversation about Riley McGree over numerous weeks at the start of the season. And I still don't understand why he's not starting games now with Bangura in the side. I wasn't sure why he's not out on that left-hand side playing as the auxiliary winger and playing as almost like a number 10 off that left-hand side. It baffles me how he's not getting a game for this Middlesbrough side. The only reason I can think of him not starting was because he was playing in America a few days before. But apart from that, I'm really not sure how he's not getting a look in. But yeah, as I say, the top and bottom of it is I wasn't confident going into the game, and yeah, I think most of us who felt that way were proven to be right with the first half performance in particular.
Yeah. Listen, we'll get onto the performance in a little bit, and you can probably tell by the tone of my voice how excited I am to sort of delve into that. But yeah, as you say, I mean, once the team had come out, immediately me and you were sort of texting back and forth, trying to work out if there was a change of shape, if perhaps I think what would have made more sense if Carrick was desperate to keep his sort of shape that he's used throughout his time at Middlesbrough would have been to see Hayden Hackney playing that sort of more advanced role off the left, which we saw against Norwich and Hull last season when he got on the score sheet in both them games. I think obviously Alex Mowat playing deeper in the midfield and allowing Hackney to go that little bit further up. And listen, although as you say, it wouldn't have been sort of much of a message to the 3 or 4 wingers that we've brought in this summer, I think that for me would have looked a little bit more. What's the word I'm looking for? Just a little bit more convincing in terms of a lineup that, we're not putting square pegs in round holes again. We're putting someone, yes, Hackney, it's probably not his best position, but he's played that role before, and we've seen that he can be effective from there. And we also know that Lewis O'Brien is a central midfielder, not a midfielder that is playing off the left. And as you say again, the Riley McGree question marks are still there, but probably more so out of hope than actual, reasoning behind it. I'm just going to go along with the narrative that basically he was out on international duty and he probably only got back late on Thursday night, perhaps. So that's maybe why Michael Carrick didn't choose to throw him in from the off. But yeah, listen, it was confusing. The shape, the start to the game, the fact that Middlesbrough have had some real solid time on the training pitches to get the head round what the start has been, to get the head round the fact that we were going to travel to Blackburn and we needed a game plan that was going to basically stop Blackburn doing what they wanted. Because even from Blackburn fans that you see on social media, from different fans and tweets and things on YouTube and all sorts, I think the general consensus from Blackburn fans so far has been that their performances have actually been quite promising, and the results probably haven't, matched up with the performances in terms of they know what the manager's trying to do. They can see the sort of style that they have. And actually, it's quite ironic because at the moment, I think that's why Middlesbrough fans are getting so annoyed, because we can't really seem to see a style or any sort of pattern of playing which is successful, or we're getting into spaces and we just can't quite find that cutting edge at the moment. It's all very much up in the air, and I don't really think anyone can understand some of the selections and the sort of stubbornness around the formation that we play. But yeah, Nathan, let's sort of get into the game now. And as you say, as far as first half performances go, it was pretty diabolical, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and it would have been topped off quite nicely had we conceded after 2 minutes, which very nearly did happen. Of course, I'm talking about the chance down Blackburn's right hand side, where it's crossed into the box and Dolan's there ahead of Rav Vandenberg, 6 yards out maybe, and I don't know how he hasn't buried it in the back of the net with a header, but he's put it over the bar. Should have been 1-0 Blackburn early on, and there wasn't too much from Middlesbrough at all in the early stages. Nothing really of clear-cut chances of note at all in the first half, really. A couple of headers from set pieces, but yeah, nothing really from open play in terms of chances troubling Ainsley pairs. But yeah, the goal, of course, comes half an hour in, and it's Smodics who gets the goal. First of all, the Blackburn centre halves able to just step into the midfield with the ball. No one putting any pressure on him. Latte Lath just sort of doing that thing that a striker does, where they sort of just screen the defender and just run alongside them. None of the midfielders pressed up. Carter's able to step in, plays pass towards Gallagher. Gallagher dummies it. Darrell Lenihan's occupied over on that left side, so Fry is marking both Gallagher and Smodics. Smodics, who drifted in off the left-hand side for Blackburn, off Rav Vandenberg. Rav Vandenberg doesn't have a clue where he's going in terms of who he's marking, because Dolan's out on the other side, and he doesn't know if he's going to go over that side or whether he follows Smodics, and he sort of gets stuck in the middle, deciding what he's got to do. Doesn't really do either. Yeah, the ball gets played in from Carter. Gallagher dummies it. Smodics takes one touch and buries it in the bottom corner. And yeah, in terms of a reaction, we kept the ball for a little spell, didn't create anything prior to half time. But look, yeah, they are seriously struggling at the moment. And you just hope that when they go in at half time, having gone 1-0 down after the first half and having performed in the manner they did in the first half, there needs to be a firm kick up the arse, G them up, light a fire underneath them, and get something out of them at the start of the second half. And what do we get? Another goal conceded immediately after the break. But yeah, Chris, your take on the first half?
Yeah, listen, I don't actually sort of have too much and really wish to add that much as to what you said. You described the first goal, as you say, it's rotten defending again. Multiple members of the back four at sixes and sevens, not knowing who to pick up. Look, I know Ralph Vandenberg's young, and I know that in fairness, right back's not his position, but as you say, in this instance, he doesn't know who to pick up. And that may possibly be down to the fact that positionally as a right back, he's basically more used to playing centre half, where he knows that, 8 or 9 times out of 10 that he's either going to be picking up a second striker or he's picking up the main striker, and that's his role. The fact that he's got a number 10 drifting into pockets and half spaces, and he basically just thinks, well, do I go with him, but then I risk Dolan being completely unmarked anyway behind me? He's basically stuck in the mud. He doesn't know what to do. And again, we see the same goal that we saw against West Brom, to a certain extent, the same goal that we saw against QPR, probably another goal this season, which I can't even be bothered to even think back and try and rack my brains. But somehow a number 10 or a midfielder from the opposing team manages to find himself in that space between the backs of Hayden Hackney and Johnny Howson and the edge of the box, unmarked, and they're able to have time and space to pick off the shot, pick off the pass, smash it in the top corner, have a cup of tea whilst they decide what to do. They've just got whatever time and whatever space they want. And it's just, it's consistently the way we concede goals. And for me, that's perhaps one of the most worrying signs at the moment. We seem to concede the same goal or a variation of the same goal over and over and over again. We cannot deal with players picking up in the half spaces, in behind Howson and Hackney. Numerous times, Lenihan and Fry don't know whether to go out and try and engage. They don't know whether to keep hold of their man. And listen, teams are obviously sussing it out because they know if they can create an overload, then basically we don't know how to deal with it. We just sort of let the 10 pick up the space or let the winger drift inside and, as I say, do what they want from him behind the midfield and in front of the attack. But yeah, diabolical. I think that best describes the first half. And as you say, yet again, I've talked about things happening over and over again, and this has been a theme even going back to last season when everything seemed so rosy in the garden, Nathan. We seem to have this awful trait of sometimes being a goal down or being level at half-time and then coming out from the break expecting some kind of reaction, and then we basically just give ourselves an even bigger mountain to climb and concede a goal quite quickly. And again, that's exactly what we do. Again, it's a similar goal. Smodux pretty much picks up the exact same position, has the freedom of Ewood Park to get his shot off. I've seen people blaming DN. I think it would be a little bit harsh to pin all the blame on him. But yeah, he finds himself with Akers and just has a free shot at goal. And if you give people like Sammy Smodux, if you give the majority of the attacking players in the Championship the time and space to pick a shot as though it's some sort of training drill with mannequins playing around them, then 9 times out of 10 they're probably going to find the back of the net. And yeah, it happens again, doesn't it, Nathan?
Yeah, it does. I'd just like to sort of put the question out to everyone. What do you all think is said in the dressing room at halftime at Middlesbrough? Because honestly, it must just be, oh, keep it up, boys. You're doing really well. Because nothing changes ever after half time. There's never a tactical tweak. There's never a formation tweak. They don't make subs hardly. And in 3 games this season, Huddersfield, West Brom, and now Blackburn, we've conceded in the first 5 minutes after half time. And that is truly, truly embarrassing, really, when you're coming out after the second half and you just capitulate straight away and make the game harder for yourselves. I mean, at West Brom, we 2-1 down at the time, trying to get back into the game. Oh, boys, come on, get back into this game. Give away a goal straight away. 47th minute. Game done. Blackburn go 2-0 down straight away after half time. Pretty much game done. The game now opens up and you're going to concede more chances than you already are. And that you already had done in the first half, where you possibly could be 3 or 4 down already after the first half. You're going to concede more chances now that you've conceded that second goal, and you're chasing the game. And look, it's really poor. And as you say again, Chris, it's the same goal. It's a carbon copy of a lot of goals this season, where, as you say, a number 10 or a midfielder picks the ball up on the edge of the box and is just able to just get his shot off. Of course, Dieng does get his hand to it. As you mentioned, a lot of people saying that he definitely should have saved it. I don't think so. I think your blame lies with your midfield too, who aren't back there and following your runners from Blackburn. And particularly in this instance, Johnny Howson's sprinted back in to help Bangura double up on Hedges. Hedges has knocked the ball to the side to Smodics, and Howson's almost just stopped. I've actually got the freeze frame here, and Johnny Howson is stopped. Lenihan is stood flat-footed in the edge of the box, picking no one up. Get out there, fly out, and try and block that shot instead of them just being able to just do whatever he likes and get 3 shots away. But look, what do we know? These guys continue to concede the same goals. We continue to provide the same analysis that we give, which is limited, by the way. We haven't got expertise to pick at and say, oh, well, this is what I would have done. But look, I'm sick of seeing us concede the same goals, because they're not really good goals either, because
No.
you're picking flaws in your own team for how they could resolve conceding the goals. And look, we've conceded a truly ridiculous amount of goals so far this season. And of course, last season, defensively, we weren't the best, but we had a prolific strike force up front that would pull us out of the mud time and time again, and we just outscore teams. 4 goals scored, 13 conceded in 6 games, averaging 2 goals conceded a game. It's truly shocking, Chris.
Yeah, look, as you say, we can't sort of provide, the level of analysis that you would hope would be within the club's coaching staff, backroom staff, analysis guys. But what we can, and what a lot of other Middlesbrough fans can see, is that we aren't being carved open a load of different ways each week. It seems to be a carbon copy almost of the goal week in, week out. As you say, averaging 2 goals conceded a game. We no longer have the ability to outscore teams, and yet we knew going into this Blackburn game after the international break that something needed to change. It's just been a continuation of the pattern that we saw before the international break. So, look, I think I recommended in the last podcast, or suggested that I thought perhaps a change in formation might be useful. Get some more bodies in midfield, try and make it a little bit more compact, and basically make it more difficult for teams to move through our structure like a hot knife through butter. And yet, nothing's changed. The way we build up with the ball, the way we deal with attacks without the ball hasn't changed. And yeah, again, it's the same goal as you say. It's you really want to bang your head against a brick wall, because it is just a case of looking and thinking it is at the moment. And look, I said last week, and I still, by all means, I'm at that stage where Michael Carrick and the idea of him being sacked has not even really crossed my mind at the moment. And that remains the same until another good couple of games go by, if something doesn't change. But at the moment, yes, in my brain, he may, his position as head coach may sort of be untouchable, but he certainly does warrant some criticism. And I don't think he's blameless in all of this, because he's stuck with the same shape again. He's tried to shoehorn Lewis O'Brien in off the left, which Huddersfield fans I saw yesterday had pretty much picked up on our lineup, and some of our fans saying, why are we trying to play O'Brien off the left? And near enough saying it was an absolute crime that what has been described as one of the best midfielders in the Championship 2 or 3 seasons ago is now being deployed as a left winger or a left attacking midfielder. It's really confusing. You can probably tell again by I'm almost putting my arms out as if to say, sort of, are we seeing this and the coaching staff aren't? Is everyone else seeing this and Michael Carrick and Jonathan Woodgate are not seeing this? Because look, they're far more qualified, as you say, than me and you, but yet they're alongside analysis and other parts of the coaching staff, they're the ones at the moment that they just can't seem to see that this needs to change. It can't continue like this. Something needs to be changed, whether McGree comes back into the team. That situation as a whole is starting to become even more confusing. And I'm not one to sort of try and throw petrol on the fire and create something out of nothing. But for me, I'm starting to think, is that a separate situation? Is there some sort of something that's gone on behind the scenes? Because again, everyone is seeing that Riley McGree is by far and away the best option that we have at the club to play behind the striker. And yet he just can't get a sniff at the moment. I hope he comes into the team on Tuesday night. I really, really hope and pray that he does. But yet he remains on the bench. And yeah, as I say, it's just, you want to bang your head against the brick wall because nothing's changing. The personnel can be slightly altered, but then again, it still feels a little bit like square pegs and round holes. And it comes back to what me and you said in the last podcast, the podcast before that, and the podcast before that. Look at last season. And if people are getting sick of Middlesbrough fans talking about last season, then I kind of agree with you. But I'm going to go against exactly what I've just said and basically go back to last season and using it as an example. Yes, okay, we've taken 50 odd goals out of the team. But from the start of the season, I think we probably knew that Cameron Archer wasn't going to come back. Aaron Ramsey wasn't going to come back. Chuba Akpom was more than likely going to go. They've had more than enough time to analyse what we needed, the sort of age category, the experience, the know-how, and the level of player that we needed to replace those types of players, knowing that they were going to go. And unfortunately, yes, it's still early days, but at the moment, you have to look at the recruitment team again, because we said it time and time again before the window had shut. We don't have that killer instinct anymore. And going back even further, if this was always going to be the plan, if we were going to try and build up in a similar way to what we have in the past, then we knew that we needed goals in the team. And at the moment, I honestly have no idea where the goals are going to come from. We spoke about the need for a striker, because from his first appearance, I think me and you come to the conclusion straight away that Emmanuel Latilas, yes, he's full of energy, he makes good runs, he's a bit of a nightmare for defenders to deal with, but his finishing is completely erratic. We've seen multiple examples of that now. He seems to get in all sorts of different spots in his mind as to what he's going to do when he finds himself one-on-one with the goalkeeper. And a few times now, he can't even get a shot off. I have no problem with bringing in players like that who I look at Emmanuel Latilas and I see there is a player in there. You see attributes to his game where you think, well, it needs a bit of fine tuning, but yeah, I like the look of him. He's got attributes that could really sort of help mold him into a real asset to the club. But if you're bringing in players like that of a certain caliber and a certain age, you also need not loads, but a few other players where you think you can put them in and basically they'll hit the ground running. And I know you can't expect every transfer to do that, but I think you would bet on maybe someone that's a little bit championship proven to hit the ground more than you would someone that's main senior experiences playing in the Swiss division, or someone that's played in the A League, for example.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I'd agree with you, Chris. I think pretty much after his first game against Huddersfield, uh, yourself and I came on this podcast. Of course, the transfer window was still open, and we were talking about our hopes for the rest of the window. And despite Emmanuel Latilas commanding the highest transfer fee that Middlesbrough paid out this summer, our hope was still that we would sign a number 9, someone that you could pin your hopes on. Of course, we'd seen links to a number of strikers. Of course, one that was sort of tediously linked was Ross Stewart, a player that's played 13 games in the Championship, scored 10 goals, a player that hits the ground running. Tom Cannon, a young player who fits your recruitment model in terms of young players that you buy in, okay, possibly not as cheap as you'd like, but a player who is currently 20 years old that has scored double figures in the Championship in his first 6 months playing in the division, by the way, you're going to have to pay a little bit more than you would for a player from abroad. But if he hits the ground running for you, scores 15, 20 goals in the season for you, you have teams like Sheffield United's of the Premier League, the teams that are lower down there that need a centre forward to pin the hopes on, that just go, all right, bang, 20 million quid, and you've doubled your money immediately. Anyway, Cannon, of course, gone to Leicester, 7 million quid. Hasn't played a game for them yet. So look, we're stuck with what we've got at this moment in time. We've got Emmanuel Latilas again on Saturday. He has that golden chance in stoppage time where he's played through by McGree. and he doesn't get his shot off, which has happened on numerous occasions now, where he's running through on goal and he doesn't get his shot off because his touches when dribbling are horrendous. And it's probably cost us a point, really, because I'm quite unsure really how the game finished 2-1 yesterday, in terms of Blackburn could have scored 7. We could have scored a good few ourselves in terms of the chances that we had in the second half. Of course, our actual goal scored by Matt Crooks, he stood 3 yards offside, and the line,
Awesome.
yeah, the linesman's had an absolute stinker. Um, and look, both keepers, despite conceding goals yesterday, both keepers had relatively good games. Dieng makes that save at 2-1 from Smodics on his hat trick, running through 1-on-1. Dieng stands tall and makes a really big save for us there, keeps us in the game, keeps us fighting. Pears makes a ridiculous save from O'Brien. Vandenberg misses a header, but the top and bottom of it is we are poor defensively and we lack a real clinical edge going forward. That's the top and bottom of it. That is what I picked out of yesterday's performance. And look, I can't really see anything changing either, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is worrying. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm sure everyone knows where we currently sit in the table. And look, if you're not very good at defending and you can't score goals either, you're on a bit of a hide into nothing, and you're going to find yourselves in those positions. And look, yes, I completely understand that the recruitment model has changed, but I don't think anyone expected it to go as drastically wrong as what it is at the moment. And I mean, people will say we're 6 games in. I do get that argument a little bit, but at what stage do you sort of say, well, this can't really go on like this. 7 games. If we get beat off Sheffield Wednesday, we see that Southampton now for 2 games on the bounce have shipped 4 or 5 goals, and yet we play them on Saturday, and I don't really even look at our team and think, well, we might score a few, because we don't really have a huge threat going forward. And even if we do create chances, as you say, there's no sort of cutting edge. It is a little bit concerning. And look, as I've said earlier in the podcast, it would be ludicrous for Michael Carrick to go anywhere at the moment. But what must happen from Michael Carrick's point of view is he needs to stop being so stubborn, or he's going to put himself in a position where basically we're going to keep on losing games. Look, it's not completely down to him. I don't think that he's sort of been backed considerably in the summer transfer window, and he's only got a certain level of player at his disposal. But there is certain situations within his lineups where you say, well, he's not blameless here. He's been handed Lewis O'Brien, who is probably the standout signing of the full summer, and yet he's playing him on the left wing. I think everyone knew once we'd signed him that he wasn't brought in to play as a left winger, or he hasn't played his best football as a left winger. So look, these little tweaks, hopefully he'll start to realise that, even if it means dropping a Johnny Howson, who it would have seemed ridiculous when we were crying out for him at the back end of last season. that we would now say that he needs to spell out of the team. But if it means playing players in their best positions, then unfortunately, if you're not willing to change the shape, that's going to have to be done, because we can't afford to play square pegs in round holes. And yeah, look, Nathan, we haven't even really discussed the second half. Ironically enough, we had a fair few chances in the second half, but again, we lacked that cutting edge. All of what I've previously said about recruitment, again, we could have copied and pasted from the last 3 podcasts, and people are probably thinking, well, you're just going to keep on repeating yourself. But at the moment, that's all we can do, because there's been no change of formation to talk about. There's been no sort of clear change in, well, we're going to play this way as opposed to what we've played previously. And as you say, we spoke about Riley McGree coming back into the team. And again, I guess we have to wait until Tuesday night to see if that's perhaps the team selection on Saturday was perhaps down to the travel element of Riley McGree, of course, being away. But if he doesn't come into the team on Tuesday night, then what was the point in bringing Bangura in? Because you said, a lot of other people said, Engel isn't really, or from what we've seen of him so far, isn't really sort of, or hasn't been asked to play in that similar role to what Ryan Giles was last season. If that was the case, then I can somewhat understand why you would perhaps want to play a more natural winger, i.e. Sammy Silvera, to give you more of a threat in terms of getting to the byline, delivering balls in, and having your threat from the wide positions like that. But we saw yesterday, and I saw a little bit of criticism for him, which I couldn't get my head around, because I thought he was one of very few positives yesterday. Bangura looks like he's quite happy to get up and down. He's quite happy to make those runs, to join in the attacks, to try and get crosses into the box. Now, there's your perfect chance to use Riley McGree in that role that he played last season, where on the sheet of paper or on the lineup graphic that you look at, it looks like he's playing off the left, but he inverts and gives the whole of the left flank to the bombing on fullback. And in this case, it would be Bangura. Hopefully that is the case on Tuesday night. But yet we see on Saturday, Lewis O'Brien really just looking a bit confused as to what his job actually is. He doesn't know if he's inverting. He doesn't know if he should stay out wide as a left winger. He's as confused as what Rav van den Berg looks trying to play as a right back. And yes, okay, I will not sort of go in on that whole situation, because in fairness, our 2 right backs are out injured at the moment. Paddy McNair played international games. I mean, so did Rav van den Berg, but perhaps Van den Berg was deemed a better option at right back, which, yeah, I don't think there's much between him and Paddy McNair in terms of filling in that right back role, if I'm honest. But Nathan, I actually don't want to dwell on Blackburn too much anymore, because it'll just continue to wind me up unless you want to make any more points. We look ahead to Tuesday and obviously Saturday, as I mentioned, Southampton. But I think the big one really is Tuesday night, Sheffield Wednesday. At the moment, the 2 worst teams in the division go head to head. I mean, I'm sure Sky will be absolutely over the moon that they've picked it as the main game of coverage for the EFL on the night. Has this game so early on in the season become must win for Middlesbrough?
It's become must win for mine and your mental sanity, I think, Chris.
Yeah, I think you probably tell, judging off that little outburst that I've just had, to be honest.
Yeah, El Crapico, I think it's been dubbed so far. Both teams have been absolutely diabolical so far this season. And I can't quite get my head around what I'd rather see, a performance or just 3 points. And I think I'd just take
Nathan,
a 1-0 off Ashley Fletcher's arse.
I'm going to interrupt you now and say I could not care less about the performance. If we win through I don't know who. Laugh. He hasn't been convincing in front of goal. If he manages to run through on goal, trip over his own feet, and it bobbles up and hits him in the face and trickles in, and we somehow win the game 1-0 and keep a clean sheet, I'd be the happiest man in the world, to be honest.
Yeah, of course we've done all right in the cup so far, and we've seen 2 wins in the cup, but I need a league win desperately, and yeah, I really, really, really hope that we can go there on Tuesday night and just do something, please. Score a few goals that aren't offside and aren't given us just pity goals, I suppose.
It did feel a little bit like that yesterday, didn't it? When Crook stuck it in, he almost looked at the linesman as if to say, oh, just give us a goal. Go on, mate.
But yeah, yeah, look, I think 3 points on Tuesday night would not necessarily lift my mood to ridiculous heights, but it'd cheer me up somewhat. And it would get me back on side ahead of Saturday. But yeah, it's a big game early on in the season. They've been as bad as we have, really. I'd seen on on Saturday they were at home to Ipswich, and Wednesday fans were protesting against Chansiri prior to the game, ripping down banners of him in the stadium, vandalising banners of him in the stadium as well. But look, a club in turmoil uh, on Sky, Middlesbrough going there. We've seen this before, haven't we, with Charlton away? So, look, I'm not gonna hold too much hope. I don't think.
Yeah, listen, I mean, there could be. I think there was tennis balls on the pitch yesterday. Reading, wasn't it? It gave me sort of horrid memories of that trip to Charlton. And look, I don't think it's got to that stage where they're walking around the stadium with coffins just yet. The Sheffield Wednesday fans, but they're not happy at all. And look, they have every right to be annoyed given their situation, but so do we at the moment. Not probably perhaps in terms of their ownership, but look, I don't think there'll be tennis balls on the pitch at the Riverside on Southampton against Southampton rather if we get beat, but there'll certainly be some unhappy faces. Um, Look, I asked you if it was a must win. I don't think you can describe a game 7 games in as a must win, but for me at the moment, it's probably a must not lose.
Yeah, but it's I hate that a little bit. They must not lose because there's nothing worse than Boro. I can imagine it as well. Boro going there on Tuesday night and just setting up not to get beat away at Sheffield Wednesday.
I don't think that's the way that Michael
No,
Carrick.
no, no, neither do I. But it's just the way that it's like just don't lose. Like I wouldn't be happy with a point on Tuesday. Really, I'd be moderately pissed off actually. Um, but yeah, I do not want to be going into a game with Sheffield Wednesday where who've just come up with they've got about they were in July and they had about 11 players signed to the club, and they're all about 95 as well. So look,
Yeah,
I can't go there and not hope that Borough are going to go there and just get a job done, beat them. We need to go there and beat them for my just
sanity.
yeah, just for my sanity, really. I think I could do with 3 points, and Sheffield Wednesday is as good of an opportunity as you're going to get, really. Um,
Well, I mean, at the moment, we are officially, unless you believe in Jonathan Woodgate's mantra that the table is lying, we are the worst team in the league at the moment,
I-
and Sheffield Wednesday are the second worst. So by all accounts, as you say, this is our best chance to win at the moment in terms of fixtures that we could play in the league. So
exactly. It's one where we have to go there, and it's our best chance of winning, as the league says. But it's also their best chance of winning as well.
yeah,
So it's El Crapico is set up lovely for Tuesday night. Sky have played an absolute blinder this early on. I don't know what other games are going on Tuesday night, but I'm sure that they're so glad that they're going to show this to their viewers, and I'm sure it'll draw many in as well over the Champions League.
yeah. I mean, over the years, obviously, Sky did lose the coverage to the Champions League to a competitor. But I'm sure on nights like Tuesday night, where it is bottom versus second bottom, they are delighted that by losing the coverage, they were able to draw in the big guns of the English Football League to show to the nation. Obviously, as you say, I'm sure it'll draw in huge numbers from a neutral perspective, and I'm sure they'll be treated to a fantastic game. Look, I mean, my sort of attempt at sarcasm there is about as sort of convincing as what Boro's backline look at the moment. Look, I tweeted out earlier today on the Boropolis account asking people for their best Boro 11 at the moment, Nathan. I think by all accounts, we sort of have, apart from the right back role, a fully fit squad to choose from without sort of basically flipping a coin between Vandenberg and McNair in terms of who fills in at right back. What would be your team that travels and faces, or at least starts the game against Sheffield Wednesday?
Dieng, McNair, Fry, Lenahan, Bangura. Hopefully he's fit. Hackney, Howson. I'd genuinely leave O'Brien out just because I trust those two, although they haven't been convincing so far. Force off the right, probably McGree in the 10 or Rogers in the 10. And it's either them. That Rogers can play on the left.
And Greenwood, perhaps, Nathan. He didn't really.
I know. Do you want to know what? I was really surprised that he didn't get on Saturday, especially because of Carrick's scattergun approach at about minute 85 when he'd made 4 attacking changes. But yeah, I was surprised Greenwood. I wouldn't necessarily mind Greenwood off the left hand side or even in the 10. I think he'd be an interesting option, but then again, you causing uproar because he's taken McGree's place and you can't get in there. No, but I would have McGree either off the left or in the 10, and that's interchangeable with Rogers either off the left or in the 10. And then up front, it'd be Latte again. I think hopefully one's just got to fall for him soon.
Yeah.
He just gets his shot off and he just buries it, hopefully, and hopefully it sets him off on a little bit of a run. But yeah, I think that would be my team. I think that Carrick will stick with the same formation. He's proven that that's what he's going to do already. It's nothing against O'Brien that he's not in the side either. It's a toss of a coin over him and House and Mind, based on the last few weeks. But yeah, I think that team there that I've just mentioned is well capable of going to Hillsborough and putting in a performance on Tuesday night and pulling out 3 points. Whether they do or not is a completely different question. and something where you'd probably get a completely different answer as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, no matter the team at the minute, I'm just not confident.
Yeah, I feel similar. Although probably the change I would make. Look, I asked the team that you would sort of think that might play, plus what you'd like to see. As I've said previously, what I would like to see and what Michael Carrick will do is 90% going to be very different. But I think we're crying out for a change of formation, even if it's just a little bit of an experiment. And I know you said earlier, it's probably not the time to be experimenting, but at the stage we are now, and it seems ridiculous to say this, I don't think it can get much worse.
Oh, it
So,
can. It can. It's the Mick McCarthy meme, but it can. It
yeah,
completely
yeah,
can.
that can be clipped up if if the worst really does happen on Tuesday night. But yeah, I'd go with the same backline you picked, and I'd go with the three in midfield of Howson, O'Brien, and Hackney. Howson sitting a little bit deeper, and Hackney and O'Brien, the two in front of him as the three. Even in terms of that personnel, if you wanted to sit two of them deeper and have one ahead, or change it up in that way, then that would be fine. I just think we need to try something different. So a three in midfield, and then Marcus Force off the right again, through probably lack of options and persisting with Latif a little bit. Obviously, it still is quite early days. You'd have to select him. I know a few people have mentioned Josh Coburn, but I'm not sure that's sort of the right time to throw him in just yet. And I'd probably go Morgan Rogers, honestly. And that is going to probably bamboozle a few because I've been screaming Riley McGree's praises. But I'm basing this team selection off half and half of what I would do plus what Carrick would do, and sort of mix and matching. And at the moment, for whatever reason, Riley McGree just isn't flavour of the month. If it was my sort of in a weird world, if I was picking the 11, Riley McGree would be the first name on the team sheet. But if it was to be a mix of what I think might happen and what I'd like to see happen, a change of formation minus McGree, that's sort of the agreement that I guess I might have to come to with Michael Carrick if he's not willing to pick Riley McGree. But yes, Tuesday night is obviously a huge game. Then Nathan, we play against Southampton, who by all accounts are a little bit of a mess in terms of defensively, but attacking wise, have some players that truly, truly terrify me at the moment.
Yeah, they're pretty much.
I'm basing that off individuals probably more than what they're
Yeah,
performing
yeah,
at the moment, but
yeah. They're pretty much Swansea from the last few years, but with a bit more firepower.
yeah,
Um, like, I mean, I'm not quite sure that we'll be able to break them down on Saturday afternoon. However, they're shocking at the back because they just want to do this two, pretty much playing two at the back. The centre halves, and let the fullbacks bomb on into midfield and yeah, pretty much give them license to try and be the championship's equivalent of Man City in terms of keeping the ball, but doesn't really work trying to play like Man City when you're playing with championship players. Um, so yeah, it'll be a really difficult test, of course. Numerous players in that squad have Premier League experience, and at times so far this season, it showed. Uh, they've been to Hillsborough already and sort of found it tough a little bit in that second half, especially on opening night. But they have big players that step up. And on that night, they had James Ward-Prowse. Now they don't, but he teed up Che Adams, who of course played against England last week for Scotland, and he scored a good few goals already in the Championship. Adam Armstrong's the same. Of course, he was the Golden Boot winner in the Championship only a few seasons ago. They've got good wide players, but yeah, they have plenty of decent Premier League players of the past. And look, it's going to be a really difficult test again, but the main game of the week is Tuesday night. We need to get something out of that game before looking ahead to Southampton. And my fingers are crossed, but my hope-ometer is very, very low at this moment in time.
Yeah, the ticker's about to go into the red zone, isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
already there. It's already there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, if you've got to this stage of the podcast, I can only applaud you because it's been as downbeat as ever I can remember, really. Look, my huge hope is that even if we are battered off Southampton, that we just get a positive result out of Sheffield Wednesday and have got something, a small positive to go into the next podcast with, because otherwise, Nathan, I dread to think what might happen on the next podcast. It really could be a painful and quite ugly watch or listen. So yeah, obviously those that are listening will be hoping the same. And if you tune in, week out, then thank you ever so much. But thank you ever so much more than ever for listening this week. It's been a slog, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's dire straits at the minute. It's a bit like deja vu from last year, but it didn't quite take us this long, I don't think. In fact, it didn't. It didn't take us this long to get a win last season. We'd done it by the end of August, and we, at this moment in time, be quite lucky to do it before the end of September. So, yeah, everyone that's listened to the podcast, credit to you all, because I've really been trying to just keep away from any sort of Middlesbrough media-based accounts over the weekend. Didn't listen to any pre-match or post-match interviews from Michael Carrick because I'm just losing motivation to even watch on a Saturday for 90 minutes, because being told by him on Saturday afternoon that the performances, quote, aren't that bad, then well, I dread to see what they'd be if they were that bad. But yeah, it's been a real slog. It's been a podcast that I've looked forward to doing up until probably about 3:30 on Saturday afternoon. But yeah, the wait goes on. I think that could be another good title of the podcast, Chris.
It could. I think you might have just given me the title on YouTube and podcast providers as well. But yeah, I think that's probably a good note to leave it on before me and Nathan just fall into the depths of depression and just sit in a dark room without even cracking a smile or being able to laugh at the situation Middlesbrough find themselves in. Obviously, in life there is a lot worse things, by all accounts. There definitely is, but for two football fans recording a podcast at the moment, it's not an easy record, that's for sure. But yes, we're leaving it there. Thank you ever so much for watching, listening. If you have done, please do subscribe. If you've got to this stage in the podcast, let us know. There might be few, but if you have, drop a comment on YouTube or tweet us or something like that, because I don't know, you get all of our credit and respect, and if that matters to you, then we'll give it to you. So yes, that's us done for this week, Nathan. Hopefully, everything's crossed that we have some positives to talk about next week. But from us, again, that has been another episode of the Boropolis podcast, and we will see you again next week.